Arsenal 2, Chelsea 1. This was a very balanced and open game at the same time. Both teams did their assignment off the job to try to limit each other. But at the end of the day, the set pieces determined the game. Let us look at what both teams did off the ball to try to get the better of each other. First, Chelsea. Now, Chelsea off the ball went into this one versus one pressing. Not aggressive, not trying to win the ball, but just making sure that they pick up everybody. Now, there were some really nice individual battles that happened all through the game consistently. I just highlighted some of them here. One was Reece James on Trossard, and then there was Chalobah on Gyökeres as well. That one was happening all through the game. And then you had Neto on Hikampie. And in that midfield as well, for both Chelsea and Arsenal, there was a constant rotation of who was marking who. We saw a lot of Declan Rice on Caicedo or Declan Rice on Andre Santos. So they kept rotating, or we also saw sometimes either Santos or anyone else picking Zubimendi up in that Arsenal midfield. So there was a constant rotation. Everybody knew who they were going to mark, as it's in this occasion as well. Now, as soon as Arsenal had taken the ball back, start from midfield is now running towards his own left wing, and then Eze is going infield. And at this time, Chelsea cleverly rotated again. Now, what has happened now is that Andre Santos is now coming to pick up Eze, while Caicedo is now running forward to go and pick up Declan Rice. And then there is Chalobah and Gyökeres just logging it off at the edge of the screen there. And then when it comes out wide again, it's that man for man again. It has changed now, but we can see it more clearly. This pattern was repeated a lot in this game. It's Neto on Hikampie here, Reece James and Trossard, and then Gyökeres and Chalobah. It was this one versus one battle that defines the entire game. Now, if we go a few frames down again, when the ball goes back, it's Caicedo going to press Declan Rice again. And notice, it's not pressing to win the ball. It's just making sure that there is no progression of the ball from anybody. And then a few frames down again, Eze runs all the way back to support the build-up, to try to create an overload to get the ball. But, of course, Andre Santos follows him all the way, keeps an eye on him, tracks him all the way to the back to make sure that he does not have that time and space to actually receive the ball and progress it for Arsenal. And again, Arsenal were forced to then take the ball, kick the ball long, which happened on occasion in this game. And once that ball goes long, is that Gyökeres versus Chalobah in front again. And I think Chalobah did an excellent job on Gyökeres in this game. There were a few one versus one situations where Chalobah just went in for the tackle and got the ball. That was one of the battles that Chelsea won in this game. Look at another example again. Of course, it's another Arsenal build-up. And then it's Reece James on Trossard again. And in the middle of the field again, that is Caicedo running out to go and make sure that Eze does not have the time or space to turn with the ball. And then when he goes back again, now there is that rotation again that you can now see that it's now Andre Santos on Declan Rice. Again, the goal is to make sure nobody has time and space to actually control the ball and do anything with it in the middle of the pitch. And then, of course, it's that Neto on Hikampie there again. And then fast forward a few frames down, that Zubimendi has dropped very deep to try to create an overload, try to receive the ball from deep. But Cole Palmer tracks him all the way, keeps an eye on him. And of course, again for the second time, Arsenal are then forced to kick the ball up the pitch. And like we highlighted just now, when they kick the ball up the pitch to try to find Gyökeres, it's Chalobah versus Gyökeres. And Chalobah did an excellent job on Gyökeres in this game. But now, that was Chelsea off the ball. Now, look at Arsenal off the ball as well. Now, to begin with, what Chelsea tried to do with their build-up is to build up with a back three and then one pivot, different from what we've known Rosinho to do in other matches. If you've watched my analysis of Rosinho's matches with Chelsea, you would understand what I'm talking about, why this is different. They're not using the double pivot of Caicedo and Santos in this game. What they did was one of either Caicedo or Santos drops into the defense. center back split wide, which is Chaloba and Sa will split wide, and then one of the two defensive midfielders, either Caicedo or Santos, will drop deep into the middle of them to form the back three, and then there is also one pivot in front. On this occasion now, it is who has dropped deep to make up that back three. But what you would notice now is as sort of stayed in this 4-2-4 shape, such that what they did was to make sure that whoever the pivot is always had a cover shadow on him. Somebody is making sure that the pass cannot get through to that cover shadow. And then, of course, you know, from Chelsea's build-up, we've always talked about how Cole Palmer and Enzo Fernandez likes to operate between the lines, between the opponents' attacking and midfield line, and just stay behind to pick up the ball and turn with it. Arsenal had a solution for that. In this particular situation, it was Declan Rice who is picking up Cole Palmer just in the middle of the pitch here, because Chelsea are sort of in a mid build-up already. It's different when Chelsea are in a high build-up. We will look at that in a minute. But in this progression phase of the game now, Declan Rice is picking up Caicedo, and then Trossard is just making sure he keeps Reece James in his cover shadow. If the ball goes the other way, the same thing happens here. Saka makes sure that he keeps Hato in his cover shadow, and Hato cannot receive the pass. So it heavily limited Chelsea's progression with the ball as well. Now, with this one, Chelsea were forced to go backwards. And then in this top phase again, what you would usually see now is that when Cole Palmer drops deep to sort of stay behind that Arsenal's midfield line, on this occasion, look at Saliba. Saliba has pushed all the way high up to keep an eye on him, to make sure that he is not free between the lines to receive the ball. The same thing happens with Enzo Fernandez whenever he steps up to receive the ball in a gap. There's always somebody with him, always somebody making sure that he's not able to hold the ball, turn and run with it. And again, instead of getting dragged out of position, now look at another Chelsea build-up that also highlights what Arsenal tries to do off the ball. Now, like we mentioned before, Chelsea are building up again with that back three. On this occasion now, it is Andre Santos who has dropped in between the centre backs to make up the back three, and then Caicedo is the single pivot in front of them. Now, as we mentioned, Eze is making sure that he takes Caicedo out of the game, that Caicedo cannot receive the ball in that position. He leaves him in his cover shadow to make sure the pass would not reach him. And, of course, as usual, Enzo Fernandez is dropping into space to come and receive the ball. But Zubimendi has spotted him already. Zubimendi has tracked him to make sure that he cannot get the ball. And then Chelsea are then forced to go wide and then to go back again with the ball. Now, let us look at another situation that completely explains what Arsenal tried to do off the ball to stifle Chelsea. Now, Chelsea are building up in the usual back three that we've talked about. On this occasion, Andre Santos is the one who drops in between the two centre backs to make up that back three, and then Caicedo is the single pivot. Of course, Arsenal have sort of lined up in that 4-2-4 shape already, and have lined up in that 4-2-4 shape. Eze is keeping an eye on Caicedo. He has basically taken Caicedo out of the game, so Chelsea cannot progress through Caicedo in the middle as that pivot. And of course, Enzo Fernandez is dropping in, finding space, trying to go and support the build-up to receive the ball. Zubimendi is keeping an eye on him, so he's no longer an option for Chelsea. And then it forces Chelsea to rotate the ball wide, but Declan Rice is immediately on Reece James, forces Chelsea all the way back again. And if I just pause it here, this is basically now the 3 versus 3 battle, the 1v1 battle between everybody in that midfield. With Zubimendi, Rice, Eze. Then for Chelsea, you had Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, and this is the 1v1. This is how they managed to keep each other at bay. Now, there is nothing for Chelsea to do here. Cole Palmer, as usual, has dropped behind that Arsenal's midfield line now. Remember, look at the Arsenal midfield line here and look at the two people in front. Cole Palmer has dropped all the way back, hoping to receive the ball from there, hold it and turn, which is usually what Rosinho wants him to do. But again, as we highlighted before, this is Saliba tracking him all the way into Chelsea's half to make sure that Cole Palmer would not have 1 second to even hold onto the ball. And even when the ball goes back, he still stood there. Saliba is still on him. He's not giving him a moment's rest. He's dropping deeper. Saliba is dropping deep with him as well. So it then forces Chelsea again, like the way it forces Arsenal to go long. It forces Chelsea to go long to Joao Pedro again. And when the ball comes to Joao Pedro, this is another battle of the Brazilians in front again. It's Joao Pedro versus Gabriel. And I will tell you this free of charge. Gabriel won that battle every single time. There was no duel with Gabriel that Joao Pedro won in this game. Plain and simple. So the two center forwards did not have any joy against their defense. So at the end of the day, we had a stalemate that nobody was really able to break on the pitch, on the ball, in open play. And of course, the goals eventually came from the set piece. I don't want to go into analyzing the set piece. Let's leave that aside. But the game finished 1-1 in the first half. In the second half, I think that Chelsea took the game. I think that Chelsea got some momentum in the second half. There was a small tactical tweak that I think Rosinho made that created some opening for Chelsea that I thought a Chelsea goal was coming. This is what I mean. Rosinho now started playing Joao Pedro as a false nine to drop into midfield to try to break that 1-versus-1 pressing. See what I mean? Let me show you just two examples. This is one. Now, this is a Chelsea dub. And of course, this is the three midfielders going 1v1 with each other, which is basically standard, what we've been seeing all through the game. But what happens now here is that, notice that as this ball is getting played back, Joao Pedro is not making a run. He stands still. In fact, he comes forward to actually receive the ball. Joao Pedro actually steps forward to receive the ball. At this time, basically, he was playing as a false nine, steps forward to get the ball. But what you would notice here is that Saliba did not run forward with him. The reason is because Kopama is making a move. He's running into that central forward position. If Saliba steps up to Joao Pedro, it means that he's going to be leaving a lot of gap here. I know that there is a man on Kopama, but that gap on that side would immediately become a problem for Arsenal because he's dragging Zubimendi away from the center of the pitch already. So what that means now is that once Joao Pedro jumps into midfield, he's able to receive the ball free and clear with no pressure on him and then turn around with the ball. And I think, in my opinion though, I know that people accuse me of playing football with my mouth, but let me play this one with my mouth again. I think that this pass out wide was a bad decision. If he has laid this ball on the path of Enzo Fernandez, I think Chelsea would have had a more reasonable prospect of an attack with that. But again, I'm just playing the game with my mouth, so forgive me. But that was what happened basically on that occasion. But look at the same thing happen again in just a few minutes after this. Now, this is Chelsea trying to build up again. Now, as we've always been analyzing in this game, is that midfield battle again, that 1-versus-1, those three Chelsea central players against those three Arsenal central players. They've gotten each other in a 1-versus-1 duel again, which nobody was really winning at this point. But the trump card for Chelsea now is this. Kopama is making that run into the center half, into that center forward position again. And in doing so, once again, he's taking Zubimendi out of that midfield and into that his own, almost making Zubimendi into a center back. But now, Saliba has Pedro in his sights initially, but Pedro does not run with him. Pedro suddenly stops, now decides to become a midfielder. In fact, he steps up a little bit. If you see at this point, Saliba knows that he cannot go with Joao Pedro. He cannot step up to go and meet Joao Pedro because if he does, as we highlighted in the previous clip, he's going to leave a gap. It is that gap that Kopama is looking for to run into. So Saliba is already pointing at Joao Pedro. He's telling them, I can't go with him. He's free. I can't mark him again. But at this point, once again, Joao Pedro is free to collect that ball in midfield, turn and run directly at Arsenal. Of course, that doesn't change anything because once this ball goes wide to Hato, the cross was easily blocked by Timber. So Arsenal defended that very well. But at this point, Joao Pedro was starting to come out of that center half position into midfield, pick up the ball and turn and run. Honestly, at this point, I thought that a Chelsea goal was coming. But unfortunately, it didn't. In the 4 minutes that followed this, another set-piece goal they considered, then another red card from Pedro Neto. That stupidity deserves its own separate video. This video is too long already. But that was how the game went down from a tactical perspective. If you found anything interesting in this game that you think that I missed, let us have the conversation in the comment section. Let me know your opinion. How did this game go? Did Arsenal deserve the game, or would a draw have been a fairer result for both teams? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And once, as usual, hit the like button, leave a comment, hit the follow button. See you on the next one.